Welcome to Chess Dog. Today we have a really accurately and thematically executed attack on the king in a Jobava London system. And our players are, white is Hans Niemann, a grandmaster who gained almost 200 rating points, I believe last year, went from around 2450 to 2650-ish, and is a very strong young American player. And his opponent in this game is someone named Titus, who's only rated 2150, still a very strong player. But I've intentionally chosen this game because of the rating disparity. A lot of times when both players are really, really strong, the thematic ideas are hidden under the surface because both know them and can avoid them. But when you see a stronger player play someone, in this case, 300 rating points lower, the thematic ideas often rise to the surface and are clearer and are more obvious and easy to see. So let's begin. Hans Niemann, who has played, I think, 23 Jobava London system tournament games, a lot. He has the white pieces, of course, and his opponent, Titus, has the black pieces. Let's begin. d4, d5, bishop f4, knight to f6, knight to c3. Now we have the Jobava London system as symbolized by the bishop at f4 and the knight going to c3, e6, e3. Now I believe he advocates the move knight to b5, directly attacking c7, but this game he plays e3, a6, so this was a blitz game played in 2020, by the way. a6 to keep the knight out of b5, knight to f3, bishop to d6. Black challenges the bishop at f4, but Hans Niemann says, I don't really mind if you take, so he just goes ahead and plays bishop to d3. He doesn't want to take on d6, because after pawn takes, black is plugging up these holes and has nice control of the center. Bishop to d3, and here, if black takes the bishop at f4, just pawn takes, and white has nice control over the e5 square and the half-open e-file. So he responds with c5 instead, attacking the center. Pawn takes. Now white scores very well after this move, dc5. Bishop takes pawn. And now white is going to play for his main pawn break of e4. A very common pawn break in this structure also is c4, but one of the elements of the Jobava London is that that's obviously a very hard move to play because the knight at c3 blocks the c-pawn. So e4 becomes the main pawn break for white in the Jobava London. Castles, castles, e4. And the best move here is probably h6 for black. If pawn takes, then just knight takes, bishop takes, and white is slightly better here. If the queens are exchanged, basically he'll try to advance his queenside majority and create a passed pawn on the queen side is usually the idea. But black responds to e4 with d4. Closing the position, he blocks his bishop at c5, but he does gain some space. So knight goes to e2. The central tension has been released, and now this knight perhaps can go to g3 and create some problems on the king side. Knight to c6, adding to the defense of the pawn at d4. e5. Hans Niemann gains space. He also opens up the bishop's diagonal towards the h7 pawn, and he kicks away this valuable defensive knight from f6. The knight goes to d5, hitting the bishop retreats to g3, and now Titus plays b5, and this was the game's novelty. Hans Niemann responds with a4, immediately attacking the queenside pawn structure, and his opponent takes, and now he takes with the rook, and that allows the rook to gain some activity. That rook would have had a hard time becoming active otherwise. So far, though, I will say black has been playing well, and the position, generally speaking, is equal. But if you'll notice, these pieces are a little bit closer to black's king. The knight is no longer at f6, so black has to be very careful here. One false move, and white might be able to generate a very quick attack. Bishop to b7. Now he plays knight to f4. He wants to trade off the knight that was poorly placed on e2 for the knight that's well placed on d5. Knight takes, bishop takes. Now, h6. So this keeps a piece out of the g5 square. It's true, but the h6 pawn now is it's a new target that Hans Niemann might be able to use to open up lines against black's king. he plays queen to d2, and you get a gold star for seeing what the idea behind queen to d2 is. I'll give you a hint. It has a lot to do with the move h6, okay? And his opponent plays queen to b6. Now, I said that one false move and he could be in trouble. Well, queen to b6, a natural-looking move, is that false move. A better idea would be to play queen to e7, so the queen could stay aligned for defense of the king. If bishop h6, g8, queen h6, then a move like f6 would allow the queen to continue to add some defense to the king. But instead of queen to e7, Andrew Titus plays queen to b6, and that's about it. That's all it takes. And now, no surprise, bishop takes h6, and this attack is irresistible. It's already too late. Just one false move, and that was it. Pawn takes bishop, queen takes pawn. Hans Niemann is threatening mate at h7 right now, so his opponent plays f5 in an attempt to block the bishop at d3 from access to the h7 square, but of course he takes en passant, reopening that diagonal. His opponent plays queen to c7, so the queen can laterally defend the h7 square. Now, knight to g5. Now, here's the threat that Hans Niemann has in this position. He's threatening to play bishop h7, and then after king to h8, bishop to f5, discovered check, king g8, bishop to e6, rook f7, queen g7 mate. That is the threat that the move knight to g5 has in it. So his opponent plays rook to f7, and he's not worried about taking this rook. It doesn't mean anything to him. Queen to g6 check. If black plays king to h8, then knight to f7 leads to a quick mate. And king to f8, knight to e6, forking the king and the queen, and the game was over. And this is a good example of why the Jobava London system is so effective. White gets those pieces, aims those pieces at the king. One false move, one little weakness, you move a piece away from the defense of the king side, and all of a sudden, you can be in big, big trouble. I hope you've enjoyed the game, and I hope you have learned something from it, as have I. See you again soon at Chess Dog. Goodbye.